It's utterly bewildering, writes Chris on Blue Sky. She seems so out of her depth, and I'm afraid for Kemi Badenoch's camp, that is very much the tone of responses. This is the gift that keeps on giving. Oh gosh, writes Duncan. She isn't finding her superpowers today, an allusion to my own little analysis earlier, and it's still a little bit difficult for me to read out your messages on this because I'm getting so many from people announcing that they've just arrived on Blue Sky and saying hello. This is just ridiculous, says Hecate, which I suspect is not their given name. And then back on the texts or the WhatsApps that have come into the studio, Chris writes, did she actually just say, I can have notes, but he can't? Pretty much, yes. Was the strongman, asks Dan, that you talked about earlier, found lifting the massive weight of Kemi Badenoch's ego? Gaff number one, says Terry. I'm sure she just said make life more experience instead of expensive. She also said £600 instead of £600 million, Terry. But remember, she doesn't do gaffs. Becky writes, oh my days, I don't think I can deal with Kemi every week. Becky, come on, stay with me. It's going to be fantastic.
It's going to be fun, Kevin.
Did she say, Loz says, questions need to be answered, checks notes from the mind.
Oh, I love that. I really
from
like
Keir
that.
Starmer's mind.
Where does it come?
We'll answer questions from his mind.
It reminds me like Harry Potter-esque, when they sort of get the wand and pull
look into my
pull
eyes,
it out,
look into my, don't
pull
look
out the
over there,
memories.
Yes, exactly. He's going to answer them with his mind. Good God, she's appalling, says Martin. Badenoch is potentially worse than Truss, says Dave. I am absolutely loving this. Did she just accuse Keir Starmer of not knowing what is going on? Neil in Skipton picks up a point a few people have made on that Liz Truss angle. He says Lettuce 2.0 appears to be in action. Jim Bob says, dear God, she is absolutely awful, like seriously awful. Marion asks, is she actually the opposition leader? Is this really the best that they can do? She wouldn't last 10 minutes in a school debating society. Unbelievably messy PMQs from Badenoch, says Jason. I have no idea what she's talking about. And let's start there, because I could read these all day. Although I'm with Mike on this, absolutely hilarious. She's brilliant. I agree. But it's very hard for you because she was all over the place. Whether you see that as a plus or a minus, and knowing what we know about Kemi Badenoch, she will no doubt see it as an enormous plus.
I think she will. I think she'll see the fact that this descended into an almighty messy punch-up as actually quite a successful Prime Minister's Questions. I'm not sure I would agree. To me, I think I'd agree with that. Just last comment, messy is how I describe it. We used to talk about Boris Johnson being like a trolley, deliberately wavering in every single direction, going from the last person he spoke to. And there are a few ways I think you can do Prime Minister's Questions, right? You can go in on a string of topics like this. She went on climate change, then the budget, then council tax funding, and then the 4-day week. I don't think that actually this is a really good strategy for anyone going into Prime Minister's Questions, because I don't think you actually get enough time to really skewer the Prime Minister on any of these things. If you move between one thing to another, I think the best strategy that I think works for most leaders is going with a sort of theme and going to really pincer them on a few things. So climate change or the budget would have been really good for her to go on it. And I actually thought in the middle she picked up when she was talking about national insurance, when she was talking about GPs, when she was talking about that funding that we know there's a gap. I thought she picked up there, and then she went on to council tax, and then she went on to the 4-day week, and I just thought, what on earth are you doing? Where are you going with this?
And she embarrassed herself a bit again on the £600 million question.
Yeah, exactly. Saying that, called it, did she say £600
but
rather
she
than
also
600
said
million?
He hasn't answered the question, and he had.
And she also sort of said, the Prime Minister doesn't know what's going on. Well, just because he didn't answer the question you wanted doesn't mean he doesn't know what's going on. Interestingly, Keir Starmer pointedly refusing to answer the question on whether he will raise the cap that councils are allowed in order to raise their council tax by a certain percentage without having a referendum. It's currently 5%, and you can add on, I think, another 3% for social care. So maybe we are going to see something from the Prime Minister in the future on that. That seems like a potential way to raise money for councils.
We're going to be hearing versions of this exchange for a long time. Is the government going to raise more money? Answer, we have to, because of what was left behind, and rinse and repeat ad infinitum.
Yeah.
There's not a right and a wrong in that exchange. We have to because, well, I suppose they're right, they have to, but also people would rather you didn't. It's just a question of whether or not but that's probably what the next election will be fought on, whether or not people believe, A, that you had to, and B, that you did it efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, I think, they've not got long to sort of go and prove themselves. David Blunkett made some really interesting comments to a think tank yesterday, the IFG, talking about how, believes that, we are going to face a Trump moment here if they don't deliver, if they don't get on with it and they don't show that they've done so. Keir Starmer is clearly really comfortable making the argument for higher taxes.
Yes.
He's clearly in his element to be able to defend this budget, say this is a budget that puts no extra taxes on working people and really defends the NHS and public services and gets them fit for purpose. He needs to continue making that argument. But, I think there were some areas where Kemi really could have nailed him a little bit on some of these changes. Like I say, we talked about the farmers, we talked about the holes in the budget, we've talked about GPs. But she didn't really, there was no knockout blows there. She, if it was a boxing match, it felt very much like Keir Starmer sort of like dodging every single punch. And I don't think she was nearly as successful as she thought she was. They seem ready to fight. This is going to be a pretty punchy Prime Minister's question.
We'll get on to that shortly, that element of it shortly. But are we flirting with the possibility that she actually did better last week?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I didn't agree with the topic last week, but I thought her delivery was better last week. This time I thought her delivery was less good. But, it goes back to the question that you said before. These guys picked her because she thought she was going to be fantastic at tearing strips off Keir Starmer. So far, I think, the strategy of him sort of rising above it, not getting too angry or frustrated with her and what she's saying worked well last week. Yes. He obviously lost his cool a bit this week.
Well, he found Boris Johnson repellent, I think, but with good reason, I would argue, particularly morally and in terms of probity and honesty before the House, which is how essentially he kebabbed him slowly but surely. I think he found Sunak a little bit baffling.
I think they got on though.
But there was a mutual a form of respect. I think that what they had in common was a desire to get on with the job. Whether you were doing it for different reasons or deploying different tactics, you sense that they'd both rather be actually forming policy and trying to change the country.
Yeah, public service and duty was something that Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer shared. I'm not sure that Keir Starmer is going to see that in Kemi Badenoch.
He seems to find her ridiculous, is the word I would use.
Yeah, I think he finds
and that's
her
why
baffling.
his patience wore thin, I think. This is why am I wasting my time dealing with this absolute nonsense?
Yeah, absurdity is, I think, how he looks at her. And there is no love lost between those two. I don't think, personally, behind the scenes, they will be getting on at all. I can't see how they will. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. It's going to be a long few years if this is Prime Minister's questions every week, isn't it? It's entertaining, though.
I suffer from excess empathy, Natasha. I don't know if we've been working together long enough for you to have picked up on this, but it is my curse. It is the curse of many liberals, is that we're far too nice. So I don't laugh. I worry if things carry on like this, then, and everyone will get very cross with me if this does happen.
I'm going to say this S word.
I might end up feeling sorry for them.
Oh, you feeling sorry for Kemi Badenoch?
There was one shot there where, because she obviously does think she's brilliant. She thinks she's absolutely brilliant. And you see that in most. But when it starts crossing her mind and her face, crucially her face, that she isn't.
It's like a puppy that's been kicked.
Yeah.
And she,
but a really yappy puppy.
But look, it's defence of anybody that sits in that role as sort of leader of the opposition. You're trying to, kick without being get kicked back yourself, aren't you? And sometimes the whiplash, I think, can go back to you when you're in that chair. It's a really tough job, and actually, if it just goes to show just how tough of a job it is, you'd think that after 3 months with no real Tory leader of the opposition, that a Labour budget which has gone down not fantastically well, and 100 days of Keir Starmer's government that have been a little rocky, I think, to say the least. You'd think this would be an open goal for Kemi Badenoch to talk about a string of issues that she feels that he's done wrong. But actually, if she's not really landing any of these blows now, firstly, it shows just how hard Prime Minister's questions is for a leader of the opposition. Exactly. I think going forward, she's got a lot of opportunity, but she really needs to step up her performance, doesn't she?
Well, we shall see. I'm sure she disagrees passionately. I did say to you, I don't know whether you were paying any attention, but I did say to you, give it 10 minutes and she'll be claiming that she's doing the weave when we were talking about how much scattergun approach was in play, and she'd just jump around to this and that and the other. Steve's mind works like mine. He's texted to say she's using She is using the weave, James. Quite a few people are asking you to remind them how many letters of no confidence need to be submitted to the head of the 22 in order for a leadership battle to ensue. They won't fancy the chaos of that for a long time.
No.
Don't think she'll fight. Personally, don't think she'll lead them into the next election if she carries on this trajectory.
Look, she is 2 weeks in. We are so far too early to be making predictions about this. I personally don't think she will fight the next election as leader of the Conservative Party. But, you know, the Conservatives are really good at getting out their leaders if they don't believe that they're good enough. Yes. I don't think that they're anywhere near the appetite for forcing someone out within a year. They will give her time. They have to, because, Keir Starmer is very right to continue to press on the public the chaos of the Conservatives and the chaos that, really embodied the Conservative Party over the last 5 years. They've got to show that they have moved on from that. And if she can't do that, that's when they'll act.
Yes.
But, another leadership contest means more chaos. They're not going to do it.
And I'll start asking you when.
A year. I think she's got more time than a year.
I do too, but the noises will start in a year.
Yeah, but she will get better. Look, I'm not going to pretend that I can go up against Prime Minister Square. I, didn't go to Debating Society or the Oxford Union, so my debating skills are less than par, and I would not feel like this is anywhere near something I could do on a weekly basis. Go up and I just don't think it's an easy thing to do for anyone.
Bruce says, bring back William Hague. And Phil has been in touch. I told you this would happen. You thought I was exaggerating. Phil's been in touch to say, feeling sorry for her. Give your head please, and with respect, give your head a little wobble,
Shall
James.
I give him a little flick on the way
All
out?
the best, Phil in Thornbury. And I think we'll give the last word to Stuart on this one, who I am 99.9% certain is referring to me, Natasha,
but you're not just a 1% chance.
Well, you never know. Okay, he says, you are not nice. You are a nasty piece of work.
Well, I didn't say that you weren't. I didn't say that you weren't nice. Yeah, that was definitely you. I'm not a nasty piece of work, though. I'm very nice.
I couldn't agree more.